Alright, so let's swap. Try to get started here. Dead Cells Shield tier list. Version 1.6 up on the screen right now. Shields, as you all know, when it comes to me, it's just a triangle button. It's there to press the button, do a parry. Do I care what it is? Probably not. But the way how we try to distinguish the stuff in here was that if you were walking into certain bosses, certain biomes, whatever, and you have a full glass case, like right here, it's just all shields. And you could really choose any shield you want. There's gonna be a priority, 100%. And some things, you know, might not come out of the glass case, might be a collector's edition only. Never open the box, factory sealed. And that's okay. That's why it's a tier list. It's not to say that any of these weapons are bad. It's just that when it comes to the glass case concept, someone's got to be at the bottom. So for the current tier list, because this is a shield tier list, and I feel like, you know, it really shouldn't be that difficult to do a shield tier list. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna copy and paste the old setup, and we'll almost look at this from a holistic standpoint. This is the previous tier list. This is version 1.6. And what we're gonna do, we're gonna try to evaluate this. So this is gonna be a little different for how we normally do this tier list format. Typically we work from top to bottom. And you know, if this format doesn't really work very well, we'll go back to the top to bottom. You're walking into a boss, concierge, conjunctivius, mamatic, and you're thinking, I could have any shield in the world, maybe even a shield from another game. The potential is sky high. But you can only take one. So you have to decide, you know, what's the priority here? If I was thinking concierge, let's actually think about each boss, and then we'll talk about, you know, the actual biome monsters after that. So when it comes to concierge, as you all know, he does really basic stuff. Just a regular attack, an aura, or a, like, attack across the ground. In terms of shields, there's some shields that do stuff in that fight, and some that kind of don't. Things that don't really do anything: greed shield, punishment, parry shield, cudgel to some degree. Like, you can get stuns, but it's not gonna last very long throughout the end. Same thing with the freeze, but luckily, like, really early in the game, the freeze does kind of better than the stun. But if you have, like, fire in the kit, if you have bleeding in the kit, then, like, you won't be able to get the shields off too much. But when it comes to shields that actually do something in the boss, we're talking thunder, rampart, assault shield. For those who don't know, you can actually interrupt the aura from concierge using the assault shield. Punishment, spike shield, bloodthirsty, all deals damage. This thing, frontline shield, it's okay, because there's a concept here where you're gonna block that first attack with the the frontline shield. You're gonna get the bonus damage, attack him a couple of times, you know, it does pretty well. And then he does the aura, knocks you backward, you have to roll away, you no longer have that bonus damage. In fact, a lot of people say that playing as a melee versus concierge is sometimes a problem in and of itself. It's like all of that melee gameplay, a lot of it gets either halted or slowed down massively to concierge's pace. Like, concierge dictates the battle when it comes to melee gameplay, unless you're using these three items up here. So because of that aura, you have to back up, all of your DPS stuff drops, your bleeding from your open wound drops, all of that stuff falls. And there's nothing that really like supplements that except for these top 3 items and maybe these 2. Only because it might give you a little more opportunity, but basically when he does the attack and you do the parry, then that's basically it. Now what Leo's talking about, for those who don't know, Leo is referring to taking a shield into the concierge fight. You could actually just stand in the corner, you can't press any buttons, and you just parry, and that's it. And yes, that is possible. Whether concierge should be doing that or not, I don't know. It doesn't seem like something a boss should be doing, but we try to disregard that. When it comes, let's assume that you actually were to play the game, this is the only stuff that would actually do something there. Everything else, you have the force shield to try to block the aura as much as you can. Should you be doing that? I don't know. Maybe not. And we're not talking about blocking the aura, we're talking about doing something either about the aura, either interrupting it, fighting through it at least for a little bit, or getting the stun, or just doing ambient damage next to the boss. But as I said, when it comes to shields, a lot of them aren't gonna do anything besides the parry itself. So you really don't have much to go with. Besides, I mean, these may as well be wooden shields at this point when it comes to concierge. When it comes to Mama Tick, things get a little more interesting. Mama Tick's susceptible to everything in the top B up. You can get some additional damage off of the bombs using the parry shield, but really not that great. I probably wouldn't try to parry the grenades that fly out from Mama Tick anyway. Might be a bad idea. Mama Tick can be stunned, so not a terrible item. Useless, not as good as the other damage options. And then the force shield, once again, it's probably better that you try to do the parries, because besides the first phase, the one where the spikes come up from the ground, that's the only time you'll probably want to use the force shield's full block, the invulnerability. The rest of the time, you really should go for the parry, because it's probably worth it if you do. Conjunctivious. Conjunct, really susceptible to stuns, so Cudgel's good. Ice is good. Rampart still does work against the tentacles on the ground. You can get that parry, get invulnerability, and then just attack the tentacles where they stand. This still does stuff. Again, it's really hard because a lot of people may not have the Thunder Shield. For those who don't know, Thunder Shield is a 5 BC reward. So when it comes to measuring it, a lot of people in chat may not understand the kinds of things it does. So just as a refresher, Thunder Shield, if you do the parry, it has an electrical field around you, just like how you would with Corrupted Power, Tonic, Vampirism, that kind of thing. You can hold the button down, which goes into the block stance like Captain America, and then you just like shoot lightning in front of you. Not a lot of people do that unless you're playing a Thunder Shield that has poison on hit or bleed on hit. It actually will apply it on the aura and the held attack. And then after you do a parry and you have that static around you, you can actually do a parry again, and you'll have a bubble around you that will stun anything that's hit by it, including bosses. Not the giant, but most bosses will be stunned by that attack. So it's got a lot going for it. I guess I should talk about each shield strength and weaknesses. So there's the other thing about water. As you all know, lightning crits in water, so you can actually get bonus damage on Mama Tick, bonus damage in Prison Depths, Corrupted Prison, all those maps with water in it. It also applies shock DPS. As you all know, that's like the brand new thing. So this does a lot of stuff. So that's kind of why it's really high. Rampart, as you all know, this is the classic shield. This is the one that gives you a force shield, absorbs damage for 2 seconds. Hasn't been nerfed yet. Like, there's nothing about this weapon that has been changed except for the damage that's dealt. And I think that was before 1.9. So it still works exactly the same. You can still take this off color if you want. It has been nerfed. Let's take a quick look-see. Rampart. Reduced invincibility time after parrying. So instead of, and visual effects when it's ending. So what, it got reduced from 2.5 to 2 seconds. But it feels quite impactful. When you think about things like the giant killer, for example. One of the best ways to use the giant killer, you do the parry with the rampart, and then you just get in like the 2 swings, dodge roll, and then do like the actual stab. And I don't know if 0.5 seconds reduces that kind of gameplay. Where this might be an issue is on something like Timekeeper, I guess. Timekeeper, as you all know, does a whole bunch of attacks at one time. You can parry one, maybe get the 2 swings off the giant killer, but she's still attacking you, like a lot. So maybe that's where you might sense the 2 seconds. But I don't know, I feel like for 90% of the monsters out there, I guess everything that's not Timekeeper and Hand of the King, I don't know if you would really feel that 0.5. And again, they didn't change the duration on other colors. So like you can still take this as red. You can still take it as purple. Purple, you do the parry, and then what? You just stand on top of them with the cursed sword right here and just spam attacks. That one you might feel the 0.5 seconds. That one might be a little difficult. Assault Shield. This one always gets some slight question marks when I have it in the S tier. But we actually had a really cool game the other day where we used the rapier with an off-color assault shield. And for those who don't know, you can do like this hyper dash with the assault shield if you press. We used to have a command that shows you how to do that hyper dash. And that's not something that exists on really any weapon. It's almost like a wave of denial on the triangle button. It will interrupt monsters' attacks and stack monsters on top of each other. So think about Promenade. That's probably a good example. Promenade, you have the runner, you have the failed experiment, and maybe you have a bombardier. You can use the assault dash and actually like push all of them on top of each other. When you do that, whatever attack they were preparing gets interrupted and they queue up a different attack instead. So with the rapier, we were doing cool stuff like stack them and then get the crits. Or you can do like stack them and then use the symmetrical lance or the war spear to hit all of them at the same time. It's not a gameplay mechanic that I would say everyone should learn. So that's where, you know, if we were to talk to Susie, and Susie has really been trying Assault Shield, it's possibly not the most useful thing for her to learn. Like, of all the shields, let's say again, glass case concept. Should I take the Assault Shield into Concierge? If you were to actually learn how to interrupt the aura using the Assault Shield, it's incredible. But could you have won the game with a no-hit had you taken Thunder Shield or Rampart? Probably. So we might end up moving this around. It's also a really good speed running weapon, but of course we aren't measuring speed runs because we don't do speed runs here. Punishment is like the premier AoE damage shield. Imagining that there is an AoE damage shield. That's kind of like funny in its own regard. But one of the cool things that punishment gets is it's actually in like the upper percentile for... Oh, it's actually like average with everybody else. 75 appears to be the baseline of holding down the block button to reduce damage. So what you do with the punishment that's a little different than the other stuff is that you can actually hold the button down and still exude that damage around you. And where that typically happens is if I'm fighting Timekeeper, or if I'm fighting the Giant, and I'm using a weapon like the Spite Sword, or I'm using a weapon like the Frantic Sword. Full blocks don't give you melee stacks, and you can actually do like these fake block only runs where you don't actually use a weapon, you just use shields. You can full block with the punishment and get a lot of that health back off the rally, because as you get hit, you get this yellow bar and you fill that back up based off of the damage that the punishment deals. And that's like not something a lot of these other things do. And again, when we talk about like, is that something that Susie should learn? Maybe not. But when you have a Spite Sword and you have that legendary, or now that we're on version 1.9 and the color doesn't matter, you can use an off-color punishment, get the full block on the Giant, activate your crits, you don't get any melees, and then you load in damage. And I feel like that's better to do it with this than any of the other stuff that requires an actual parry. And if you do have to parry, then punishment still does like a bonus damage. So I think that's all pretty good stuff. Spike Shield. Spike Shield, the highest DPS for a raw parry. But when you look at it, it deals 140. Punishment does 80. And I guess you don't get to see what the actual aura damage is. And then Bloodthirsty applies a dot. The damage is much lower, you know, it's only 30 plus 20, so really like 140 is pretty big number. And for a lot of elites out there, it really hurts. But typically, if I'm playing a Spike Shield, I'm not gonna be anything but survival. Like, this isn't really something you would put on an off color compared to any of these top 4 items. So really, you're playing this while you're survival, and you're only really parrying Arbiters, Inquisitors, and then bosses. Like, you use the parry on bosses, and it's incredible. So when it comes to the spike, like, I wouldn't want it to drop down super far, but it doesn't really do anything besides the actual parry. So these I might end up revisiting. This look like a revisit right now. Bloodthirsty though. Bloodthirsty, as you all know, we have buffs to bleeding right now. So you may want to think that, okay, I'm gonna play tactics. I might have a cleaver, I might have kunai, but I'm playing purple. Should I use a shield? I would. I've been using shields with kunai, and it's actually like really decent compared to doing like Ripper to get stuff back. You still can, but this is, now that we're on version 1.9, this is like a new thing that you can kind of incorporate in tactics builds if you were playing something bleed focused. Of course, you could replace it with a kunai if you were playing something else, but a lot of these other weapons I probably wouldn't use a shield with, because as you all saw in the range tier list, there's a lot of good weapons right now that are all ranged, and there's like a lot of reason to not take a shield at all when you're playing range. So Bloodthirsty still does exactly what it did. If you're talking biomes, this is probably like the go-to weapon after the Thunder Shield for biomes. Ice is fine, Cudgel is okay, Punishment probably about the same, but this hits other like platforms above you, unlike the Punishment. So you can get that block, get bleeding on the Inquisitor above you, and then all of a sudden it dies. Of course, if you're playing an off-color Bloodthirsty shield, that might not happen, but it's all about like where you want to actually apply this thing. Maybe you still apply it on those other platforms. Maybe you're running Hokuto plus the punishment, which would actually work. You do extra damage with your Hokuto until you find like an alchemic carbine. All right, we had these two here. The ice shield does exactly what you would think it does. It freezes enemies on parry. Whether that's great or not is like kind of tough, because when it comes to bosses, freezing bosses sometimes messes up your timing, and then you might have some other build focused on freezing where after enough parries, like it's not doing anything anymore because the monster built up immunity to freeze. So let's say you're taking this with the Nutcracker, it's probably gonna work for the first like 75% of the boss's health bar, maybe 50% if you're thinking about Conjunctivius, which has multiple phases. But when it comes to Hand of the King, might be a little tough. And then on biomes, like the concept that you freeze a monster is great, but I don't know if that was like necessary compared to any of these other shields up here. I think it's better than Cudgel. Like, of course, having a stun on a boss is nice, but when you think about biome monsters, what's nice about the ice shield is that the freeze is actually AoE. So if you are in toxic sewers, for example, you got a bat, you got a scorpion, you have purulent zombies, and they're all just like going at you. If you just do one parry, it'll probably freeze all of them. And that's actually really good. Punishment kind of does that too. It would probably kill all of them. Bloodthirsty probably does that. Thunder Shield probably does that. So that's why it's in the B tier. But over Cudgel, because Cudgel hits one target only. Bloodthirsty. Not Bloodthirsty. I keep calling it that because I see this red right here and it makes me think it's bleeding. Frontline. Frontline is pretty much there as a red shield. And then we got this as a red shield. So Frontline was the very first red shield in the game. They decided that, you know what? We want to give you all bonus damage. 20% for 6 seconds is actually kind of decent. If you think about how we use support mutation, while tactics, this thing right here, that might give you 20% on a mutation, and like that's incredible. But the thing about support is that the actual turrets also have 20% damage. It's not just your melee. So frontline shield, you do the one parry, you get bonus damage on your next attacks for 6 seconds without the cost of a mutation. Like, that's pretty decent. Isn't frontline damage only? It is. So in that circumstance, you may think, could it be better? So say for example, let's use Concierge again. Concierge, he does the punch, you parry it, you have 6 seconds of bonus damage on your regular attack, your melee attack. You might be using a Hayabusa gauntlet or something. You roll behind him, get a couple punches in, he roars, knocks you back, does the aura. So now, like if you had a couple seconds on your shield, probably is gone by that point. Maybe you have a cleaver underneath them, you threw the cleaver down, that's still, you know, grinding them up, but it's not getting that 20% extra. So I feel like in the circumstances where you get the parry off, I don't know if you're gonna like get all 6 seconds worth, especially as a melee attack. Should it go higher than 20%? Probably not. I feel like maybe it would be a little better if like it had brutality scaling. So like at level 1 brutality, it only gives you 1%. At level 20, it gives you 20. But it'll also enhance your corrupted power. Not corrupted power, your lacerating aura. Or it'll enhance your knife dance. So it'll be like really cool where you don't press any buttons. You just walk up, wait for the parry, press every button you have. All with 20% extra. Compared to like 20% on a Hayabusa gauntlet, that's like I don't think that's very good, to be quite honest. C rank. So we had the Cudgel, situational item here. This thing, I kind of stopped taking Cudgels, to be quite honest. When it comes to shield, again, thinking about that glass case standpoint, there's like very little reason for me to take a Cudgel. If you think about elite, say an elite failed experiment, it's gonna go for the punch, you parry it, he's stunned forever. Awesome, like fantastic. Could I have done that with the Frost? Yes. Could I have done that with any of these? Maybe not the Bloodthirsty, but these two would probably give me some time. These two absolutely would. This and the front line, maybe not. So, like, I don't know if I even need to stun an elite failed experiment. An elite golem, absolutely. Like, I would... Glass case, I'm definitely taking that for elite golems. Conjunctivious? Yeah, I could probably see using this over a rampart. Hand the King, immune to stun. Timekeeper, the stun lasts for a very short amount of time. So it's like, you're better off getting value off all of this other stuff compared to Cudgel. So right now, that's what, 3 instances where we might take the Cudgel over something else? And I feel like 3 out of everything else is not very much. Are we still, like, how are we still doing tier lists? Tier lists are the thing. That is, I don't quite know when, like, this channel became, like, synonymous with the tier list. But if you actually go to YouTube right now and type VeeDotMe in your search options, I'll even show it to you. VeeDotMe. Look at what comes up. The very first thing, tier list. So it's like, this is why we do this, is because people want to see it. So when it comes to the Cudgel, like, I'm not taking it in a lot of circumstances over other shields. Parry shield, I feel like falls in that exact same scenario, where it's like, this is good when you get that shotgun effect. Like, every parry you do splits a weapon into multiple bullets, and that's actually pretty great. A parry from a parry shield doesn't really do much at all. It really only works for grenades and shots. So in that case, like, when do you take a parry shield? You take this for the giant. You take this for Timekeeper. You probably don't take it for Hand the King because you'll get more value out of all the other stuff. You don't take it for Concierge. You don't take it for Mama Tick. You don't take it for Conjunctivious. I know Conjunct does the aura, but again, you'll get more value out of parries if you used any of these shields up top compared to parry shield. So once again, you have like 3 scenarios where parry shield's actually the pick. You can count Inquisitors, Bombardiers, Arbiters, like all of that stuff is probably like good. But I also could have taken Bloodthirsty shield. Yeah, parry shield destroys Timekeeper. Big agree on that. When it comes to the glass case, I think I still might take Punishment. Maybe Bloodthirsty, like depending on the build I have, Bloodthirsty. But for like raw damage, that's probably the hit. The only D rank item on the list, the knockback shield. Every time I do a tier list on shields, everyone's begging me to move knockback shield up. Monsters take extra damage when they hit the wall. They absolutely do. But it's like, I've never been in a situation where it was like, oh, I wish I had the knockback shield. How could I possibly have beaten this elite or this monster if I didn't have the knockback? If you think about like the elite room, those special stones that elites spawn in, it might be kind of cool where like an elite's there. Take an elite golem, for example. Use the knockback, hit it in, hits the wall, and then like, wow, that was awesome. But then that's like kind of it. Maybe knock back the enemy close to the wall, then use sandals or javelin. See, that's okay, but you could also, or I guess I shouldn't say you all. So this is, again, a VeeDotMe tier list. All these ideas are kind of just my own. If you all disagree, it's perfectly okay. We just try to put my thoughts on paper. So when I think about, and I get this a lot with, like, back in the day, Blood Sword. I used to get this a lot with the Boy Axe, where the idea was, this is like, it supplements the other builds in the same way like a Hokuto bow would. And to me, I would say, or I could just kick it. I have the sandals. It's an elite golem. I just dodge, and I know that's just a forehead. I just dodge, and then I start kicking. And whatever the elite is, it's gonna die. No parry from a knockback shield required. Same thing with the javelin, or if you're running javelin plus the Spartan sandals, you throw the jav in, goes against the wall, teleport in, and then you just kick. And like, as much as that sounds like a forehead or a KR device, a KR advice, I don't think knockback is required in that at all. The knockback shield, that is. What makes the Spartan sandals so strong is that you can spam the kick to continually stun lock a monster and push it back. It's even strong enough to kill bosses if you just keep kicking. And knockback shield doesn't do that. Like, if the knockback, for example, knockback Hand the King, he drops into spikes, he takes like quadruple damage because he fell in spikes. Yeah, that's one instance where the knockback is probably better. Or if, for example, like you knock back bullets, and maybe the bullet will also like knock enemies backward. Take Timekeeper, for example. She's throwing shuriken at you. You do the parry with the knockback shield. Each one turns into like an atomic bomb and like hits the Timekeeper and just has her fly across the screen. That would be compelling gameplay, I feel. Probably a little strong, but I don't know. Next on the list, the frontline. Everything, I'm calling frontline shield this. I'm calling this Bloodthirsty shield. So bad. Force shield. Historically an F. The reason why I made this an F rank was because I never saw, and you all might actually be able to correct me here, but I never saw where that invulnerability was what I needed at that time. Thank you, HZD. Welcome. Happy to have you here. So when it comes to shields, there's really not a lot of time where you hold the triangle button down. The first idea, actually, before I get that, let me, actually, no, we're good. The first idea was that in 4 BC, where monsters like teleporting on top of you, you got bombs in the sky, you got bombardiers dropping down on you, you have runners running across the map, you have purulent zombies throwing eggs at you. The idea was that you would hold down the force shield when you feel overwhelmed. So the monsters can't touch you, and then you can like reevaluate the situation. But the issue is that when all the monsters are on top of you and you're holding down triangle, they don't care that you're holding down triangle and getting a shield. They're gonna keep beating on you until you run out of shield. So the actual force shield itself, it's just like a delay mechanism. And you could say, yeah, V, it's there so that by the time my, and remember, this is a survival only weapon, by the time my giant whistle is up, which is a 20-second cooldown, maybe I'll be able to escape. Absolutely not. Like Crusher, yeah, V, it's there so that I can put the Crusher down, I can do the block, and then nothing can hit me while I'm sitting in a Crusher. But Crusher got buffed, and now it has a slow. So like, you don't need protection because Crusher protects you. You could say, oh no, V, we're on version 1.9 now. So on version 1.9, you can use this off color. You're playing tactics, you're running wave denial, you block everything, wait for it all to pile on top of you, and then you press wave denial, kill all of it. Or same thing with the knife dance. And I would say, as tactics, having everything stack on top of you is very dangerous. And if you can do that, then awesome. I would love to see it. I wouldn't mind trying it myself. But in terms of like win rate, I feel as though that gameplay doesn't take us to the next level, win rate wise. You feel like the force shield should have a mini knockback or a stun when the monsters hit it. I don't know about when the monsters hit it, because then the timing might be off. Say for example, you have a slasher, where like the first attack he teleports in, hits you, gets stunned, your aura is like diminishing, and then by the time he's ready to attack again, your aura's gone. What I feel should happen is once you release the aura, then it does a knockback. But I feel as though that just puts you back in the same situation you were in, because you knocked all the monsters away. Now your shield's gone, so they're just gonna teleport right back on top of you, and now like you're in trouble. So the only thing I feel like it could do is maybe like as you're holding the button down, think about what other game has something like that. Overwatch? Yeah, Zarya. Where's my Overwatch players at? Overwatch Zarya. You press the button, you absorb damage with your barrier, or you put the barrier on other people. It absorbs damage, and either A, you get a damage boost, or B, after the bubble goes away, then it deals damage based off the damage it absorbed. But that's, I feel like that kind of encroaches on some of these other weapons, where the primary interesting gameplay should be the bubble itself. But I don't know. Wouldn't melees infect you? No, melees does not infect if you block. Any shield, actually. You can block with the knockback, and you will not take melees, so long as you actually blocked it. Yeah, there we go. There's Synapse talking about the Zarya in Dead Cells, confirmed. Alright, so last one, Greed Shield. Greed Shield, as you all know, synonymous with bad. And it's tough to say that, because Greed Shield is actually one of the highest DPS shields. It has an 80 parry, which is on par with the punishment if you disregard the like aura that punishment does. And then Greed Shield gives you a tooth every time you parry. That gives you gold. Only one per monster. Now, back in the day, again, version 1.6, we used to say a Greed Shield might sell for $1,000. How many, like, assuming that one gold tooth sells for $40. Like, you could sell the shield right now and probably get more value out of selling it compared to parrying like 20 times with the eventual like missed parry that might cost you either a health pot or having to buy food or something like that. I think that makes this an F. Like, you're probably gonna get more value long term than actually the money you would have gotten. Now at 1.9, things are a little different. Cost values are down. The cost of the money you get back for selling an item is down. So a Greed Shield might only give you back like 400, 500 gold, where each parry might give you 40 gold. We did this in the last couple tier lists where we actually hopped in the game and did some experimentation. When it comes to Dead Cells, I feel like I know some stuff, but I don't know enough. Alright, so Greed Shield. Greed Shield, successful parry knocks out one teeth. So let's take a look at what that looks like. I don't know how much Greed Shield is gonna sell for. That's the only problem. Wait. I'm getting $100 per parry? You're kidding me, right? What's that? Oh, the 205 is the damage. Welcome back, Terry. Hang on. Freaking rat. I'm getting $100 per parry. 200 enemies equals 1 health flask. That's a terrible number. $100 could give you a weapon real quick. Let's just assume that the first weapon in a shop would cost you like 2,000 bucks. So when it comes to the greed shield, that's 10 parries. And that's not really that bad, because when you think about, if you only parry the Inquisitor shots and nothing else, like don't worry about any of the hard stuff like a rat, just go for the easy stuff, then you could probably get $1,000 per biome just parrying Bombardiers, Inquisitors, maybe Runner, Rampager, stuff like that. What's the cost of a health flask in 1.9? to $20,000. So I think that's actually a real number. Now, I do feel like money in 1.9 is pretty easy to come by. But maybe for like the people who still like spend a lot of money on rerolls, a lot of money on mutation resets, stuff like that. The first mutation reset's only 1,000. That's 10 parries for a mutation reset. The next one, 20 parries. You could actually supplement every single mutation reset just off of greed shield parries. That's actually not that terrible. All right, so we just went through all the items for 1.6 tier list. When I think about the capabilities of each item, we're gonna do like a speed rearrangement. I'm gonna assume that nothing here is gonna be triple S. I do think this went up. I think this went down. I think this goes down. I think... See, the tough part about this is like, when do you ever use frontline over blood? While survival, I guess, but then like when you use this over rampart. And then again, like these are A rank and S rank, so maybe like it's okay that this is a B. I think I'll move this down to meme tier, because like I can tell you all kinds of stuff that would make this item like actually really good, but I don't think any of it will increase anybody's win rate. Like I'm pretty sure I'm just gonna get you all killed for trying it. So we basically had like Tentacle in the meme tier, but I feel as though this is better than Tentacle. But we also have like the Syringe in the meme tier. So it's really not quite a weapon that I can just tell anybody to use. Like it has a real gameplay requirement that, you know, for the average person might not even be worth learning. It's not back really that bad. It's not. It's just when it comes to, again, using the glass case standpoint, when I'm looking at all these shields behind me, and I have the choice, like what one am I gonna pick in this biome or this boss? Knockback's never the one that I go for. Like there's always another reason for me to take a different shield. And that's of course me. You don't have to agree with that. That's just the VeeDotMe standpoint. But plus 20% on a giant killer on a boss is kind of a real number. But I still think like you may as well just get this stuff instead. Rampart I think is still just as good as it has been even with the nerf. These three right here, I definitely think these two belong in the A tier. This thing, the spike shield, is really strong. It's probably the best of the generic shields. Like it doesn't do anything besides do damage. And like that's not a bad thing. It's definitely not bad at dealing damage. So yeah, maybe it does stay in the A tier. Cudgel though, I just can't really justify using this over this or this. You could say, yeah, it should go into the C tier, but I think now that I saw what works with this, I think I would actually take Greed Shield over Cudgel. just to get that like free mutation reset. And free is like in kind of air quotes. And then unfortunately, as much as we would like to bring this up, I think the only other scenario where this weapon's actually like really good is on the spoiler boss. So spoiler boss does a lot of stuff that you can't parry. And I think this is probably the only time you do something. But again, that's like one scenario out of so many that you would just take another shield instead. Do I think ice is better than parry shield? I think ice works in more circumstances. Again, parry shield I think only works in Timekeeper, Giant, because on regular monsters that shoot bullets, say Inquisitors, Bombardiers, all of that stuff, this actually does a freeze on parry. And I think overall, when it comes to utility, I'd rather have that potential shield around you on a melee parry. Say for example, you got rats, failed experiment jumps on you, you do the parry, freezes everything that's next to you. I think that has more value than parrying the Giant and Timekeeper. Like in terms of win rate, I guess it's probably about equal, to be honest, but when you talk about the number of circumstances it's actually like the pick, I think ice may have had more circumstances than parry. How is ice better than Cudgel? Don't bots get immunity to freeze for a while? Yes, same with stun. Hand the King can be frozen, but Hand the King cannot be stunned. The stun on this only does the stun and nothing else. Whereas with the ice shield, you also get a slow after. Take Timekeeper, for example. You do a multi-parry off the Shuriken on Timekeeper, but I think they actually fixed that, where monsters should reset their attack pattern on freeze. That was something that they tried to do. Frozen. Yeah, frozen enemies are now interrupted in their attacks. No surprise hits after defrosted failed experiments. And I don't know if this like has gotten a lot of testing. To be perfectly honest, I have not gone into Timekeeper with an ice shield and like measured if the Shuriken stops. If it does, it's better than Cudgel, 100%. All right, but I think we're good. I think this is a successful tier list. I didn't really want to spend a lot of time on the S rank, on the shield tier list, because of the fact that not a lot changed. The only thing that really changed was the fact that dual scaling is gone, so now you can play purple. You don't have to worry about getting a green parry shield, or you can play survival and you don't have to worry about finding a red Bloodthirsty shield. All shields work at all the time, and you can mix and match. You can play stuff off color, and all of those are actually like buffs to the shields, so there's no nerfs out of that. And the only other change is ice shards are now a triple S, so there's a lot of builds where you would have ran a shield and now you just don't because you found ice shards instead. So I think we're gonna lock this in. Shields again, 1.9 this time. Gonna save it. And again, that still took me like an hour to do a shield tier list. Just because I love talking to you all, so I actually like don't mind doing this.